yeah.
So this is a conversation I have with Jessica Garson. Jessica Garson is a Twitter developer advocate. So basically, she does what I do at GitHub, but at Twitter, which is, I mean, you should definitely reach out there and ask her more about. But what I'm getting at is Jessica came on because Jessica is involved in the Live Code NYC group, which I thought was super awesome. I actually always wanted to make music with code for the longest time, and just never really sort of got into it. I've always watched a bunch of talks, and so yeah, I invited Jessica to come on to talk about using some open source tools to build music, and that's what she literally does with us in actually right now. So I just want to shout out, if you have interest in joining us live, I stream every Tuesday and Friday on Twitch, but once a month we'll have a guest on and we'll talk about a project and how they're doing open source to accomplish whatever goal it is. That's what I'm trying to do with the open source channel. Open source being a platform to find your next open source contribution. But without further ado, we're going to learn how to make music with code using a tool called TidalCycles. If you're interested in creating music on your own with TidalCycles, I left a link to the tutorial in the description, so definitely find it there as well. And without further ado, this is Jessica Garson teaching me how to make music with code. Yeah, Open Source Friday. It's the pizza party. Welcome, I'm B. Dougie. And I've got a guest here today who's Jess, and Jess is my guest.
Hi, how's it going? So glad to be your guest. I even ate some pizza, so yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it. Jess and I met a couple years ago back in the Dominican Republic, back when before times when people used to travel. So I don't remember which, it was I don't remember what event was it that I was down there for. Oh, it was one of the Python ones. That's what it was. I don't know. You remember?
Yeah, it was Pi Caribbean, I think.
Yes.
It was really funny. Also, that night was like the first time, or while at Pi Caribbean, that was the first time I ever streamed, which is pretty crazy because now, like, as soon as COVID hit, that's like all I've been doing all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is now what our lives are like now. It's like only streaming. And Jess, your day job is DevRel at Twitter, correct?
Yeah, DevRel at Twitter. Actually, at the end of this, I'll be showing something I built because I wanted to connect with my audience. Because, like during the pandemic, it's just like so easy to feel isolated. And so I started playing around with this way that like my audience could tweet at me and I could get in my music. And so
nice.
I'll be showing that at the end, like on top of what we've been doing. But I also, I live in New York City. And when I moved to New York, everybody was like, oh my God, you should be part of this collective called Live Code NYC. At the time, I had played around with making music with code, and I spoke at a meetup I used to run called Hack and Tell, and then I tried to book a show, and everybody was like, live coding music, that's not a thing. You can't just write code at a party or at a show. And I was like, really? I think I can. And then as soon as I moved to New York, there was a group of people, Live Code NYC, that were doing this, and I was so excited to find them and be part of that scene.
Wow. So Live Code NYC, you explained it to me before, but in case people missed that, you get together and you start writing code to make music?
It's a loosely formed collective where we get together and just talk about making code or making music with code, and a lot of times code related things like compilers and stuff, and we have meetups every so often. And then also we run shows where people just show their art. So a lot of people make visuals with code. A lot of people make music with code. I do both these days. And it's just a really positive programming community. And it was started by this woman, Kate Sicchio, who is one of the early people in the live coding scene. She's amazing. And then she does live coded dance stuff. And then there's this other guy, Ramsey, who was doing live coded visualizations, but via live coding, just video games essentially, which was awesome. And there are a couple of other people that were Jason and Tom, who were also involved in kind of the early setup of Live Code NYC.
Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I'm super intrigued with the space itself. The thing is, I don't. You probably watched GitHub Universe last week. I'm just making a lot of assumptions. Maybe you didn't, but
Yeah, I did watch. I was so excited to see Shar and Dan Gorlock from Live Code NYC perform, and like just other names that I had only like read about perform as well in the play track, which was
yeah.
awesome.
And yeah, actually, real quick, I'll share my screen. I think I have you here. Yep, perfect. Yeah. So GitHub, and it's funny because like a lot of people who was on the play track for GitHub Universe. So GitHub Universe being the conference for GitHub. I work at GitHub. I think everybody here probably knows that in the chat. But for the sake of anybody watching this after the fact, I work at GitHub, and we had just regular conference where we streamed it, and then we had these like play track sessions. So an entire track of just people making music, which was pretty amazing because like what we're gonna touch later. Like people use those technologies, but there's also so many different technologies for making music and art online. So yeah, this is Mod V, which I don't think I actually saw this session.
Yeah, I actually just learned about Mod V through GitHub Universe actually as well. I didn't know about it, and I was like, when I saw that, I was like, whoa, what is that? I like really want to play with it now. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And so I'm excited to learn more about this. But before we jump into like actually tinkering and playing around with it, I'm curious though your professional programming background. Like, how did you get to DevRel at Twitter?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So I've had two careers, which this is like working in DevRel is the second career for me. I actually used to work in democratic politics.
Okay.
And I did that for like a long time. And basically your job when you work in democratic politics, especially if you do anything like field or anything like that, is to like create a data or create a list that is hopefully large enough to turn out people to vote.
Yeah.
And I started seeing it as like a data problem. Like I became like really obsessed with like the data that went into our database that we were using needed to be like, you know, I was managing staff at the time, and I'd be like, hey, make sure that everything is coded correct because like I need to be able to make decisions. And then I started just like thinking more about like, well, I really like making things, you know, orderly in a database. And I was like, maybe I should like learn how to code. And then a problem came where like I had to do something that would have taken me a really long time to do. And I was like, I wonder if there's like some code that I could do. And I Googled how to do that. This was in 2010, found some Perl code and was like, oh my God, like my code works. This is amazing. And then from there, I got a job in tech support and started like learning how to code and kind of struggled, actually, to be honest, for a few years until I found a group called Hear Me Code, which is free beginner-friendly classes for women by women, run by this amazing person named Shannon Turner. And it was really awesome. And that existed in the DC area at the time. It no longer exists, unfortunately. But it was just a group of people teaching other people how to code. And it was really great. And like, I just really, you know, just being part of that community, like I would take the classes and then be able to TA the classes and eventually teach, and like just having that community to support me, even though like I didn't really know as much as I know now, just being able to like contribute and be part of that really kind of advanced my programming skills. And then I became a software engineer at a couple of different places, but felt like something was missing just because like I really enjoyed like teaching people how to code way more than like being an engineer. And so I was trying to figure out like what the next step was, and moved to New York, quit my job, moved to New York, found Live Code NYC, was working on my art and teaching at NYU as like an adjunct professor, and then like also planning like meetups and hackathons and things like that. And somebody was like, you know, there's this job called a developer advocate or a developer evangelist, and maybe you should look into like getting a job in developer relations. And I was like, oh yeah, that's like all the things I love to do, but for work. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar background, and folks, you can all, if you're in the chat, you've been around, you know my story, so I don't need to reiterate it again. Definitely check out the YouTube if you're interested in Flex, which also call out to Brandon. So we do have a couple people in the chat, and I failed to even give you the chat link, so I'll give it to you now if you wanted to open up the Twitch chat while we're doing this. But so Brandon actually, he always uses the flex command, because I was actually promoting myself earlier, saying I worked at GitHub. So hard flex. But actually, I noticed that the flex command didn't work. So apologies on that, Brandon. I'm not really sure what's happening with my flexing because that works. The yo command works. So we'll figure that out later for sure. Oh, and Lake's here. Welcome. Welcome in. Everybody's sort of straggling in, but like we did start a few minutes late, so apologies on that. We had some. Well, I mean, it's like the first time I'm back. Actually, Jessica, I haven't streamed in like a month, really. So this is like the kind of like the first time back too as well.
Welcome back.
Yeah. And Crazy Max is saying congrats for the presentation on GitHub Universe, which
yeah, it was really awesome. Also, mad congrats on that too.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of work, to be honest. So part of the reason why I haven't streamed in a month is because GitHub Universe took up a lot of my attention, and I think it started off with like, hey, you want to do this thing? Like I was gonna be in the keynote, and then by the way, also you're speaking, giving a talk. So I was like, yeah, of course, okay, I'll do a talk. Also, we're gonna have you MC, and then so I became like the trifecta. I was like the Beyonce of GitHub at that point.
I mean, I've heard you're the Beyonce of DevRel, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
Oh, well, I mean, it's a hard position to keep the title, but I'm working it. Or say, baby, I'm worth it. I guess I would say that's not a Beyonce song, but I figured that would be tongue in cheek enough.
I think it works.
Excellent. Speaking of work, I'm interested just to jumping into like music and code. So yeah, feel free to like actually just imagine, and you don't have to imagine because I haven't done any of this stuff yet. So imagine that we're all brand new. Definitely. Let's start from like how can we get started?
Yeah, so today we're actually going to be using a collaborative environment on this website that I actually recently learned about. Over the weekend, I performed with a friend of mine, Melody Lovelace, who is amazing. And we were talking about like how to collaborate together. And then she pointed me to this website that basically lets you run TidalCycles with just straight up in your browser. And like I remember the first time I ran TidalCycles on my machine, it was like a little bit of a harder learning curve, I think. So yeah, that was something that like just having a like in browser setup, it makes it a little bit more accessible. So today we're actually going to be doing some work in this collaboration environment. And you could do solo mode or collaborate. Brian and I will be doing collaborate today to do some collaboration, which should be pretty fun. And then my personal setup actually, so most of like the languages that folks use for live coding are actually built on top of another language called SuperCollider. And SuperCollider is kind of an older programming language, and it's a programming language for making music, but it's a little bit like esoteric in syntax, and it kind of can be, there's a big learning curve. So there's a lot of other tools that were built on top of them. The three most popular that I see are Foxdot for Python, which I think that's where I gave a talk on Foxdot when I met you, right?
Yeah.
So it's Foxdot, and then SonicPy, which is like more of like an IDE. And I think Sam Aaron played GitHub Universe, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna actually Max is actually asking about the person who opened up GitHub Universe. And so yeah, Sam Aaron, we use him a lot actually at GitHub for different events. So he's kind of a well-known property within GitHub lore, I guess.
Yeah, he created SonicPy, and then there's TidalCycles, which was created by Alex McLean, and actually we played the same show together last weekend, and he's just amazing. Like just watching him inside of like an IDE is like just like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. But yeah, and that's TidalCycles, and then we'll be using a mini, like more lightweight version of TidalCycles, and then I'll also showcase some Foxdot. And so what I have to do is I have to start SuperCollider, and then from there I like toggle it with a plugin for my editor, and I use the Atom plugin for Foxdot.
Yeah. So sorry, when you say you have to, you said when you do super titles, you have to run something.
Yeah,
SuperCollider.
I'm gonna SuperCollider. I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I wasn't sharing my screen when I said that.
Yeah.
Which probably. Yeah. So I have in here. You can actually see that I have this like little down all the way at the bottom. I have where it says like clock.clear, and you can actually see, and that is inside of Foxdot. And then I'm using Atom as my editor. And then from here, you can actually see Fox.Toggle. I just like the Fox.Toggle package for Atom the best. And then from there,
Okay.
and then before I can start that, I just have to type this one line of code inside of Super Collider, which is Fox.
Oh, got it. Super Collider is kind of like is it built on Electron?
I think it's actually its own language.
Is it? Okay.
But I actually don't know that much about the history of Super Collider, to be honest. Like, I've just started like writing pure Super Collider, but I started using it mostly just to like start Foxdot, and then from there I was like, oh, I could like add my own samples in through Super Collider, and then I started doing more and more and more with it. But yeah, I don't actually know that much about the history of it. We should probably learn some more about it. I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, no pressure.
Also, yeah, and so one of the things like I personally like experimental music, which I think you know.
Which, yeah, I mean, when you did the Sonic Pi presentation and the Voxdot presentation, yeah. I think you had like different voice modulations on your to make music, which was extremely fascinating. I think everybody else in the room was kind of like.
Yeah, my personal music tends to have a lot of screams these days, and I will live sample myself screaming. I'll play samples of myself screaming. I personally just as an artist really like the idea of like starting out softly and then adding in like an element of like screams, and then like the first time people hear it, sometimes they're like, ew, what is that? And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I get it, it's like not that harsh. And like seeing that happen and seeing people like getting used to it is really exciting to me as a performer. I also used to play in a punk band, and I used to
what'd you play?
I used to do vocals.
Okay.
In a punk band. And then I kind of like grew tired. Like I felt like it was really boring. I was like, ooh yeah, like this is really boring, like everyone's making the same sounds, and I wanted to like make something completely different, and like that led me to live coding music with my own screams and doing weird stuff, and like I don't know, it just feels a lot like me, and it's like I don't know, I just love the idea of like writing code to like help me be the weirdest, most authentic version of myself, and that's something that like and I'm so lucky to have like a community behind me that like supports, that will still let me like play shows. And like one of the last Live Code NYC shows we had, it was a New Year's Eve show where I screamed into the new year, which I didn't realize how appropriate that would be, but like
yeah, it was very telling. Yeah, I mean, no one knew what the year was going to be like, but we all got here.
And then I also use a visualization language these days called Hydra, and actually I'm gonna write some Hydra really quickly. So I'm gonna select Hydra from in here, and we're gonna do OSC, and parentheses, and then out, and then we can start to make some visualizations.
Okay, so, excellent.
And this is a JavaScript framework created by Olivia Jack, and it's already in this environment. And then let's make some like shapes. So Kale ID. So
I'm curious though, as well as all these technologies of the open source. Like, can I see them on GitHub and stuff like that?
Yeah. Hydra, Olivia Jack, and let's do GitHub. Oh, here it is. Popular repository is Hydra. Yeah, I'm gonna drop this in the chat. And then also. Oh, I'm signed in as Twitter Dev. I probably shouldn't be signed in as Twitter Dev.
Excellent. It's the world of DevRel. Too many accounts.
Too many accounts. I probably should have logged back into my personal. But
well, I'm honored that Twitter Dev is here with us today.
Yeah, just Twitter Dev is here. And then also, let me drop in Foxdot as well. All GitHub. Cool. And then I'm also going to drop in TidalCycles as well, which is what we're going to be using.
Excellent. Appreciate you sharing links. Yeah, because it's like this, the music and programming thing is something I've always, like, I personally play music myself. I actually was in I guess you would call it a punk band. It might not be like we were more of like a Green Day cover band, and this is like middle school.
Awesome.
So like
Awesome.
whether you consider that time of Green Day being punk or not, that's for up to your discretion. But yeah, our band name was called Chicken, which was chicken with an S.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I didn't know that, but that is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send to you a list of all the samples that we could possibly use. And I just sent that in the chat as Twitter did. And that's sort of like, it's going to be like half the battle on this stuff is like knowing what's available. So from here, we have everything that is listed in there. We can actually start to like be writing stuff. So I'm going to actually switch this to mini Tidal. And then from here, I'm going to, and actually, I'm gonna try to make something. I might turn off.
Yeah, that Hydra might be a little distracting for our.
Yeah. Let me just like turn that off.
But I'm curious though, as you're typing, if you were to do a show with this combination, are you able to share the output like a separate output, or is this all in browser?
So this one is in browser only. I'm actually gonna I'm just gonna reload our collaboration environment, which I may have to re-sign in. Yes, I have to sign in. Cool pizza party. Log in. Oh no. Hold on 1 second. Cool. All right. Yeah, and then also typically my environment tends to look like this.
Okay.
And then I sometimes will run. So I can actually do this maybe. I'm just going to save this as a JavaScript file. Let's call it pizza.js. And then from here, I can actually toggle Hydra, which is another Atom plugin, and then do OSE.out. And then I am crazy, so I like to like write my code on top of it, and it looks really cool like that too.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's actually, do you want to get started writing some stuff?
Yeah.
So from here, so we can start with sound, and then inside of quotes, we can say which sounds we want. So I think I want to start with BD, which is for bass drum, CP, and then GABA. And then from here, you could do Shift Enter to start playing.
And the time signature and everything like that, is this inferred?
You can actually set it down here where it says set new tempo.
Okay, excellent. I didn't even see that.
Yeah. And then from here, let's say you're like, oh my God, Jess, you're playing, like, stop. So from here, you could just type the word silence. And then that stops it. But let's say we actually
it stops it on beat too as well.
And then the other thing is you don't actually have to write out the word sound. You can actually start to do, so we could do like GABA.
Wait, whose whom is that?
It's a sample.
Oh, nice.
And it's a sample called
And to add samples, I can just add it to the GitHub library.
Yeah. So you could just take from the library. I actually have the library. I always have the library on in front of me just because like I like just knowing what's available and like just being able to see my options and be like, do I want to use Can or Casio or Circus? Like, and actually I saw a performer I really respect have like the whole sample dictionary in front of them. And I was like, whoa, that is so awesome. Like, like I just love the idea of like learning together. But
so what's if I wanted to add a sample though, do I have to go through approval process?
So you could probably send a pull request. You can also make a sample inside the TidalCycles documentation. I'm actually gonna look that up really quickly. Let's do TidalCycles.
I guess I assume you could fork because I see a bunch of forks as well. You could probably fork it and then add to the sample that way if you do it and won't have to wait for everybody. Yeah.
And in your own environment, you can do this. And I'm actually going to add it into the chat, which is custom samples. And I'm sure you could probably make a fork and do a pull request as well too. I'm sure they would love that. And so one of the things you might have noticed is I started actually playing with like the ×3 and ×4. That just adjusts the amount of times that the sample plays. So one of my favorite samples that's built in is one called Birds, which sounds exactly like what you think it is. You could do Birds ×4.
Oh. This seems pretty intuitive too as well. I mean, like silence, and then once you get the sort of the script down of like, I guess your ×4, it kind of starts making sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then also like so much of it, like, so basically we're just making some patterns, right? And like that's just basically like the way to call it, is just like we're basically just going in there and we're like making patterns and like, you know, playing around. And like one of the things that like I love so much about live coding is that like there's no wrong answers. Like they're all kind of right? Like there's just like, you know, as long as you're making sound, it doesn't really like, it can get weird and interesting, and then you could like make it sound better and like do things. So one of the things I also like playing with is like resting. So I'm gonna show you something. So if you do S, there's a sample called Cart, and then there's 808 for like the 808 synthesizer. And then if I wanted to put like a rest, it would be a tilde. And then I can do an 808. So let's play that.
I'm just waiting for it to start slapping. It's I feel like it's right down my rabbit hole of messing around with 808s.
Yeah, and we can add some more 808s too.
Aya.
Okay.
Aya.
All right. So I have the music now. Do you want to? You can mute your computer audio, and then I'll grab the computer audio.
Aya.
All right. There we go. Chat can tell me if they can hear now. This is excellent. So I definitely see a lot of familiar. So I come from a place where I used to make music. So like the Moog and 808s, they're all familiar instruments. Silence is
That was hard for me. Yeah. One thing on that, yeah, like so that's one of the things I love too is like, you know, like the synths actually reference like other like real names sometimes. So I'm like there was one for a while called Prophet in Foxat, and I was like, yeah, cool. I know what a prophet sounds like, and it sounded like that as well too, which was pretty cool. Yeah, and so a lot of the sample names are familiar as well. I'm gonna drop the full like list of the built-in samples into the chat too, so people can like actually see it as well too. Or no, I already did that, but. Yeah, that's something. One of the other things too about it is that you can play with panning. So like the first thing that I did was I typed in Jux, J-U-X, and that let me kind of like play with the panning a little bit. And there's some other stuff that you can do too. You can maybe do like, since, you know, we both like 808s, we've talked about that. We could do this, and this actually, and FM is actually one of the NASA samples. And then there's pulse for a pulse wave, and stab. I just really like the stabbing sound.
You got the pulse, the L and the U flipped.
Oh yeah, yay for live coding. But I love I love being with another like programmer too, because like because it's always like I always feel so safe because I'm like, oh yeah, I can make mistakes. Oh, and I have a star at the end too.
Yeah.
Super cool. So we could do like maybe pan and then sign for that.
31 seconds.
This sounds like the music I listen to.
Auto sequence start.
So yeah, that's a little bit of that. And then we can also like play with some like controlled randomness. So we could do glitch, which is one of the samples, and then we could do n or hashtag. And hashtag's how you end or how you add effects. And so you could do irand, which lets you control integers, or lets you control the randomness based on an integer. And so from here we picked it as 8.
Sounds like the cha-cha slide clap right there.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get DMCA'd if any of these samples are used in any pop music.
Yeah, I think it's okay because I think it should be fine. I've done this, and this was like brought up on like a forum post somewhere, like just because like a lot of these samples are like just like in a lot of sample packs that like it should be okay. And then I have I have one more thing I wanted to show as well when it comes to effects. So there's a whole list of effects, and I'm actually gonna send that to the chat too. It's inside of the TidalCycles website, and I also do sometimes have that open too while I'm playing, just because like there's a lot of different things, and sometimes you're like, I forget what I wanted to do. So you could do BD. Let's do CP. I like this less a lot, and then we can add on some crush. And then we could do 4.
So I guess question, because I know a bit about music. When you do the CP for the clap, but then you do the BD for the bass drum, is it always 4, 4, 4, and the clap is going to come on a 2 and a 4?
Yeah, and then you can also adjust that too as well.
Okay, so you just add a sort of like adjuster to the clap to say, I want the clap to happen as a kick drum instead?
Yeah, exactly. And then you can also control that with like, you can maybe do like, so you could do something like every 4, or let's do it maybe, yeah, I think it's every 4 fast 2. And actually, let's just like make sure I'm doing this right. So I'm actually going to go into the documentation tutorial. And I think this is, yeah, so you can kind of like start to like play with that a little bit too. So yeah, you could do like every 4 fast 4 or something like that too. So we're going to try that in here. So let's do every 4 and then fast 2. And then from here, let's do I think it's a $sign that we want to do. And then let's do BD.
So,
Cool. Yeah.
So I'm curious too as well. The introduction. So when you type in, like you just typed in your stream, it's going to continue to play even if you delete it.
Until you press silence. Yeah.
Okay, so you can continue to loop on things.
Yeah. So let's say I wanted to like maybe like add in some notes too in here, and like we could start using a couple of the different like windows too for different channels. So we can do maybe like so I really like that control sound. So maybe let's do that 5 times. Times 5, And then from here, I can add in some notes. And then the first thing I wanted to learn how to do when I first started playing with Tidal 2 was actually stack stuff on top of each other. So let's do that. And then I think we're about ready to jam. What do you think?
I think I'm ready to jam. Like, I thought we were just jamming just the last one. So, yeah, let's do this.
Okay, cool. All right. Do you want to take this one? I'm going to, I think this one you can go into the where my cursor is, and I'll take this one. Sound good? And we could play at the same time. All right, awesome. I'm so excited.
All right. I don't know if it's like what do you call it? Like interviewing. I'm blank now. Wait, I can open up the sample.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the effects too. And you can also just copy me as well.
I definitely don't know what I'm doing.
No wrong answer.
This actually sounds not too bad.
how that stuff works. I'm gonna stop this JavaScript just so it makes I always feel so sad when I turn it off because my editor just looks so boring and I'm like, oh, it just looks like a normal editor. But basically the way that Foxdot works is that so we were using the Haskell wrapper, and actually a modified one for online called mini tidal. But there are some built-in synths, so we can do so we can run our code in there and we can actually see all the different synths. And then there's samples that match the letters. So a lot of times I'll do things like this, especially with my audience. I'll be like, play, thank you, Brian. So that's thank you, Brian. And then let's say I want to add in maybe this, like one of the built-in stars, or one of the built-in synths. One of my favorites is stars. So we can do. So that's a little bit about like how Foxdot works. But I built this thing that lets me just kind of let people tweet at me and it gets in our song. So I get my bearer token to authenticate to the Twitter API, and then I make my authentication headers, and then I make a request to recent search, and my query is anything that tweets at me. So it's to Jessica Garson, and that will get only tweets to me, which is pretty cool. So I can make my request headers. And then there's an object called data that has the tweet ID and the tweet. And I turn that into a data frame, and I can access that at random places. So if people want to tweet at me, which is at Jessica Garson, hi, hello, or yo, that will match different beats. So I can actually show you what each of the beats are really quickly. So we have this XOXO, and that is for hello. Hi. Yo. And that's for not found, which is pretty cool. And so that it just does that as just, it accesses a list in Python. And then from here, I just have a main logic statement, and then it just starts playing the matching beat. So I was thinking that people could tweet at me while we're jamming together. Does that sound good? And then I can access the data frame in different places.
That sounds good.
All right, so I'll let you drive on that side and just start making music in there. And then, if people want to start tweeting, we can do it that way. Sound good?
Okay. Sorry, when you said drive, getting people to tweet.
Or actually, no, that if you wanted to just start making music inside of Estuary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah, but before I start, can I just ask real quick about stacks and what you meant by stacks?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it, and then we jumped right in, and I totally forgot what those were, and I did not want to touch them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I actually had one that I was playing with before, just practicing, where I was like, oh, I love the way that sounds. So it just lets you layer patterns on top of each other. So this layers BD CP on top of C4 with these three notes, which is 0, 4, and 7.
Okay.
And that's one of the ways you can get more musical with this, too.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for stacks yet.
You can also just copy mine, too. And then so how I learned how to do all of this was always copying and pasting examples and then just changing it and making it my own.
Okay, maybe I'll start that way.
Yeah. I actually straight up did that while collaborating in a performance because I was like, I don't know what to do next. I'm just going to take my collaborator's code and cut and paste it and make it my own.
Say that again.
I'm gonna write it in the thing.
Yeah, I think we can wind down. Actually, this is pretty good. I like this. This is copy and pasteable.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love it.
So right now, this is yeah, I see Python and some AI involved. Mr. Darkside is asking.
Yeah, I don't think there's any AI, but there is Python. The Python was, we layered that on top. I was just kind of like, oh, maybe we can all jam in type thing, but I stopped it. So right now it was just the website Haskell mini title that we were using at the end. But yeah, thank you so much for jamming with me. I think it sounded pretty cool.
I think it was good. I think so. I could see, like, once you know your instruments, like being able to do like a call and response in these little title boxes. But yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. I kind of want to go through later today and just go through all the sounds and like pick apart which ones.
So one of the things I did when I first started with Foxdot was I just like went through every single sample and just like played it one by one. And that's really fun too, because then you know like what you're doing and you're like, oh yeah, it's that sound. And then you can start to like play with it. There's also like a really good tutorial on both mini title and in the TidalCycles website too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, I found Circus was my that was my hit right there. So I think I'll be messing with Circus later on. And
I can't wait to hear what you create.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I might. And then to be able to share, actually, that's one thing I wanted to ask about sharing, like this performance. Is there a way to share like the sounds you made, like samples?
Yeah. So you can always, I've seen people do patches to Dart where you can do that. So I think you can. I'm sure that's possible. Alex, who's the creator of TidalCycles, is very much like in the open source community. And I think would love if you're like, yo, I have some samples I made, like, because you can add in custom samples. I'm sure like if it sounds really cool and you're enjoying it, I'm sure he would love pull requests. And I think I've seen pull requests to people adding in their own samples too.
Before I continue down the rabbit hole of not knowing what I'm saying, I'll go ahead and end the stream. But Jess, how can people find you? I failed to put your name below your head, so you'll have to.
I'm on Twitter, obviously.
Yep.
Jessica Garson's my handle. I'm also on GitHub at Jessica Garson, Jess Garson on Instagram, but pretty much Jessica Garson on all the internet properties. I can't wait to connect with folks. And also, if anybody ever wants to jam with me, I'm very open for collaborations. So, you know, it's always like, I find it very like relaxing to just kind of do this with another human. So, and I really miss jamming with people IRL. So luckily I have a hobby where we could do it on the internet together. So that's really fun too.
Excellent. Yeah, actually, I think I might get my team at GitHub to start jamming with me because we've been trying to figure out ways to like collaborate as we're all remote, and we're writing code, we're doing our jobs, and you know, having fun at the same time. So
yeah, and also open source. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it checks all the OKRs. All right. Well, folks, we'll see you around, and Jess, stick around. We'll chat later.